A hí seo connic mé ar an television ar go raibh tú Féin agus Uachtaráin Sarkozy mar buddy agus chuir sé deistín agus chuir sé deistín orm nuair a tháinig mé céad chomh amaideach a bhí tusa. This was at a summit which noted that 23 million people are out of work across the EU. Agus tusa ag imird an Amadán leis Sarkozy. Agus Stuart tú go bhfuil pobl as ar gleagan. Taoiseach, could you tell us how much extra austerity you signed up to last night? What extra cuts and tax increases on low and middle income families will be required to meet the new 0.5% deficit ceiling? In your State of the Nation or State of the State address before the budget, you said, and I quote, "I want to be the Taoiseach," this is Tusa, "I want to be the Taoiseach who retrieves Ireland's economic sovereignty and who leads a government that will help our country to succeed." And yet last night you signed an austerity treaty that hands significant new powers over to the European Court of Justice and the European Commission, unelected bodies, to impose economic policies on democratically elected governments and to impose heavy fines where they believe these policies have not been adhered to. You also doggedly refuse to give the people their democratic right to have a referendum. So how can you talk of restoring sovereignty on the one hand and at the same time deny citizens their democratic right to have a say on this treaty while you give away more powers to unelected officials at Brussels?
Taoiseach, thank you.
Well, for you to get up here above everybody else and talk about meeting people when you yourself were buddy with some very shadowy creatures over the last 30 years. At least the French president is elected democratically by his people. And everybody who attends at that meeting is quite entitled to give good wishes or whatever to everybody that they meet there, because we have to work together in the interests of Europe. And I might add that the French president yesterday was central to an issue which was causing some concern at the meeting and which was worked out in a very satisfactory compromise. So for you to come in here to this House, where you have been elected democratically yourself, and accuse anybody else of being buddy, at least the world can know that I had not just an altercation before with President Sarkozy, but yesterday a very convivial conversation about elements of this. But you, sir, have never owned up to some of the buddy creatures that you associated in the last 30 years. And when I'm asked Deputy Adams in Armagh to apologise on behalf of this state for people who were murdered in Northern Ireland, where people crossed the border and were deemed to be in safe houses, I had to say, Deputy Adams, that the organisation involved was the enemy of this state because they murdered Gardaí, army personnel and innocent civilians. And I'll tell you something else, Deputy Adams. The buddies of that group, whom you know and with whom you are associated, the truth will still come out sometime. So I'm very glad that your party has moved a long distance from those dark days. But for you to come in here to this House of Parliament, and just because the French President passes by and says hello in his own way, makes a big issue of it. I remind you of the buddies that you had yourself. Now, if you read, and you'll have your opportunity to comment in respect of the treaty tomorrow and on many other occasions. But the amendment which was actually agreed in respect of Article 4 last night, and I'll quote it for you. The existence of an excessive deficit due to the breach of the debt criterion will be decided according to the procedures set forth in Article 126 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. This agreement is rooted in the legal base and the legality of the European Union, and for you to say otherwise is simply not true.
Deputy Adams.
Ignore most of your remarks, Taoiseach. You didn't answer the question. I won't be here tomorrow. I will be burying a very old friend of mine, a person who actively assisted in the creation of the peace process, which your party stood against at the time. But I don't want to go there, Taoiseach. I want to deal with the question that I put to you. How much austerity cuts? I just think it's inappropriate for a Taoiseach to act like an idiot when he meets the French president. Now, I also want to appeal to all TDs. Yes, Concordia. I want to appeal to all TDs from all parties and none to call for a referendum, not to hide behind the AG's pronouncement in this. For all TDs in this Oireachtas to call for a referendum so that citizens will have their say. And you had fine words to say about jobs and growth, but Taoiseach, there are no new plans, no new money and no new jobs. There isn't a single red cent, to coin a phrase, for job creation yesterday. But on the 31st of March, the government will pay another €3.1 billion
Thank you.
to failed banks.
We're over time.
Just, if I may say so, Concordia, this 0.5 target will mean a further €6 billion in cuts and new taxes. It will mean, on top of the €8.6 billion you've already agreed to cut from the economy, that people are going to have to pay for this. And you have the audacity to say that the people are mad? Taoiseach, would you spell out, and I put the question to you again, what cost will this treaty mean in terms of lower and middle income families, in terms of cuts in their services, and in terms of their taxes?
Thank you. Taoiseach.
Well, Deputy Adams, there is a process to our democracy here, and part of that process is to adhere to something that has been well tried and tested. And if we are to attempt to change our constitution, and it is so deemed necessary, then the advice of the Attorney General is the process by which all governments have followed over the years. In fact, the referendum in respect of the 1998 Good Friday Agreement involved a constitutional amendment also. I'm sorry for your friend, and I'm sorry for the family of your friend. But if you want to continue to challenge about the process by which we do our business here, then you have a duty yourself. You might think it's funny, Deputy McLaughlin, the 3,000 people who lost their lives during that period of 30 years. You might want to forget, but some of us don't. Now, in regard, Deputy Adams, to the cost of what this treaty, this intergovernmental agreement, is not the answer to all of Europe's problems. But what it does do is have 25 of the 27 countries of the European Union sign up to a political process where fiscal discipline and proper governance of the economic affairs of each nation will be put into place. And that means that the funding for this country, which is in a programme for the next 2 years, as authorised yesterday by the full meeting, will continue for this country or for any other country in a programme when their programme ends, provided they continue to meet the conditions of that programme. It is for us here, not for Europe, to decide how we should close the gap in our spending over taxation. And that's a very serious problem, as you can understand. For you to understand that we take out 3.4 billion this year, if you decide to have one fell swoop at this and close a gap of 15 billion or 16 billion, which you wanted, the impact would be catastrophic. So the sort of finances and economics that you and your party have been pursuing have been wild in the extreme. What's involved here, Deputy, is a process of ratification of this agreement, whereby the countries, the 25, who've signed up for this, and the 27 of the European Union will apply proper governmental standards to the running of their countries so that economies can grow, where jobs can be created, and where central to the agenda for the future is the promotion of job opportunities and work for our people. We cannot do that unless we sort out our problems, and they will not be sorted out unless we work with our colleagues and decide ourselves here in Ireland what it is we have to do. As Deputy Martin is well aware, the next 10 years will see a €3 billion payment in respect of the promissory notes to Anglo-Irish Bank. The technical work that is currently going on now, is to deal with the scale of that burden on the Irish taxpayer. And that work is now being initiated by the Troika itself. And when its paper is produced, Deputy, it will have that status, and we will continue to work with our colleagues, because if we're to get benefit from that, we will need all of their support.